There's a meme making waves in people's eggnog over social media these days purporting a controversial claim: Jesus, Santa Claus for adults. My first response to this meme is, what do you meme by that? If you meme that children often believe in fictional fairy tales and adults believe in fact-based evidence, then I agree. Jesus is for adults, and actually people of all ages. But I don't think that's the intent behind the crafting of the meme in question. I believe the intent is to convey that little kids believe in fictional Santa Claus and many adults believe in fiction too, Christianity. Well, why think a thing like that, Mr. Meme? Is belief in Jesus or belief in God really no different than belief in Santa? To answer this question, first, we've got to ask if we have any good reason to believe in Santa. What good reasons are there that can lead us to logically conclude, therefore, Santa exists? Now, I'm not emotionally opposed to the existence of Santa Claus, and my life would not really have to change if Santa really exists. So, if there were any evidence pointing to a jolly fat man in the North Pole who flies around with Rudolph giving gifts made by the elves, then I would happily follow that evidence wherever it leads. Even if there were logic-based arguments concluding that Santa probably exists, I would be very open to the existence of Santa. Come to think of it, Santa Claus would save me a ton of money on Christmas presents. Be that as it may, there is no evidence or any logic-based arguments concluding that Santa Claus exists, or even probably exists. So, although I'm willing to be persuaded, there just isn't any evidence or logical reasons to believe in Santa Claus. Sorry, kids. Now, maybe you're saying to yourself, that's right, there's no evidence for Santa Claus and there's no evidence of God or Jesus either. That's why it's ridiculous to believe in Santa Claus or God. But is that true? Is the evidence or lack thereof for Santa Claus and the evidence for God really the same? Well, if Santa does exist, we would know what to look for. A big, jolly, white, bearded, fat man in a red suit flying around in a sleigh being pulled by flying reindeer, delivering presents to children on Christmas Eve. We would look for his factory full of elves at the North Pole too. So far as I know, this evidence for Santa has never been detected. Now, that in and of itself is not proof that Santa does not exist, but once we add that to the fact that we have no other reasons to believe that Santa exists, then we can safely say that Santa does not exist. But what about God? If God exists, what would you expect to find? Do you even know what evidence you should start looking for? Before stating that there is no evidence for something, make sure you know what kind of evidence there should be if that thing does exist. If the God of the Bible exists, for example, he is not the kind of being you would see flying around in the clouds. He would not be some sky daddy, as many internet atheists seem to think. No, if the God of the Bible exists, he would not be some humanoid Zeus-like being. God, if he exists, is an immaterial, unembodied mind, a spirit. So what should we expect to find if Christian theism is true? We would expect to find scientific evidence of the beginning of the space-time universe. We have that. We would expect to find evidence for the fine-tuning of the initial conditions of the Big Bang so that intelligent life, not to mention matter itself, could exist. We have that. We would expect to have historical data showing that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person of history who was executed by the Roman government. We've got that too. In fact, we would expect to be able to make a strong case via the historical method alone that Jesus actually rose from the dead. And historians have demonstrated that the resurrection of Jesus is the inference to the best explanation after examining all the historical facts. So the things we would expect to find if Santa exists do not exist. However, the things we would expect to find if the God of the Bible exists, those things do exist. So after taking everything into consideration, although it would be irrational to believe in Santa Claus, one is quite coherent by believing in the God Jesus revealed. That is to say, we have good reason to celebrate Christmas. So the next time someone compares Jesus to Santa Claus, just ask, "What do you mean?"